Congratulations! You just lost the house of your dreams to an algorithm that doesn't have a heartbeat but has a $1 trillion credit line. While you were saving for a 20% down payment and stressing over a 7.5% mortgage, a corporate server in Manhattan just outbid you by $50,000 in cash before you even finished your morning coffee. In 2026, the American dream isn't being sold, it's being seized. We have officially transitioned from the land of the free to the land of the subscription. You aren't just looking for a home anymore, you're looking for a landlord you can never look in the eye. The middle class is being systematically evicted from the concept of ownership. They don't want you to have equity, they want you to have a recurring monthly bill for the right to exist on a piece of dirt they already own. This isn't a housing crisis, it's a corporate land grab. And if you don't understand the new rules of 2026, you're not an investor, you're just a future tenant in a world where everything, including your front door, is as a service. I'm Jack Finance, and today we're going to talk about how to buy your fortress before the institutions buy the ground under your feet. Walk through any new suburban development in 2026. Look at the manicured lawns, the smart locks, and the identical gray siding. It looks like the American dream, but there's a catch. None of it is for sale. We have entered the era of the built-to-rent community. Entire zip codes are being financed, constructed, and managed by institutional capital before the first brick is even laid. They aren't building neighborhoods, they are building harvest fields for your paycheck. In the old world, corporations bought stocks and bonds to grow their wealth. In 2026, they've realized that owning your front door is a much better hedge against inflation. Why bet on a tech company when you can bet on the fact that a human being will always need a roof over their head? When a Wall Street fund owns the entire street, they aren't just your landlord, they are the market. They control the supply, they dictate the price, and they ensure that a starter home is a relic of the past. They don't want you to build equity. They want you to pay for the experience of living in a house while they reap the capital appreciation. Every month you pay rent, you are literally funding the very machine that makes it impossible for you to ever buy a home of your own. They've replaced the mortgage with a subscription. And unlike a mortgage, this one never ends. For decades, the American middle class had one reliable engine for building wealth: home equity. It wasn't just a roof, it was a forced savings account that grew while you slept. You paid down the principal, the market moved up, and by the time you hit 50, you owned a massive piece of the American pie. In 2026, that engine has been dismantled. When a corporation owns the walls you live in, the wealth generation doesn't disappear, it just changes direction. Every dollar of appreciation, every cent of equity, and every bit of tax advantage is sucked out of your neighborhood and funneled directly into a diversified fund in New York or Tokyo. You are no longer building a legacy, you are a high-yield dividend for someone else's portfolio. By depriving you of the ability to own the space you occupy, the system ensures you remain a perpetual donor to the corporate machine. Without equity, you have no leverage. Without leverage, you have no exit strategy. You are effectively paying a premium to watch your own potential being harvested and sold back to you as a lifestyle choice. If you aren't owning the dirt, you are just working to pay for the privilege of standing on it. Welcome to the era of the HOA on steroids, where your local government isn't elected, it's appointed by a board of directors. In these new corporate-owned developments, the Homeowners Association has evolved from a neighborhood nuisance into a private enforcement agency. When an investment fund owns the entire zip code, the CEO is effectively your mayor, and the bylaws are your new constitution. This isn't about the color of your mailbox anymore. It's about total behavioral control through service contracts. They've digitized the good neighbor policy into a predatory fee structure. If your grass is an inch too high or your car is parked incorrectly, an automated sensor triggers a fine that's debited directly from your account. You aren't a citizen with rights, you are a tenant with a list of restrictions. They use these contracts to mandate everything from which internet provider you use to how much electricity you're allowed to consume, all under the guise of community standards. It's a closed-loop system designed to harvest every spare cent of your disposable income through micro-penalties. You're living in a high-tech fiefdom where the landlord doesn't just collect rent, they manage your lifestyle to ensure maximum shareholder value. The 7% mortgage rate isn't an economic accident. It's a filter designed to strain the middle class out of the market. While you're staring at a monthly payment that's doubled in 3 years, the institutions are playing a completely different game. They don't go to a local bank for a 30-year fixed loan. They have direct access to wholesale capital and private credit lines that you will never see. High interest rates are the ultimate weapon for institutional buyers because they effectively paralyze the individual. When rates stay elevated, the average family is forced to sit on the sidelines, watching their purchasing power evaporate. This creates a vacuum, and Wall Street is more than happy to fill it. They wait for the mortgage lock-in effect to choke the supply, and then they swoop in with all-cash offers that bypass the banking system entirely. You are being priced out by a cost of capital that doesn't apply to the people outbidding you. The system keeps the barrier to entry high for you to ensure the inventory stays available for them. It's a rigged race where you're running with lead weights while your competitor is flying a jet. By the time rates eventually drop, there won't be anything left for you to buy. The corporations will already own the deed. In 2026, we are surrounded by synthetic assets. They can print more currency, they can fork a digital coin, and they can revoke your software license with a remote update. But they cannot manufacture more soil. Land is the ultimate proof of work because it's the only asset that doesn't have a reset button controlled by a third party. While the world chases digital phantom wealth, the institutions are quietly anchoring themselves to the physical reality of the last frontier. They know that once they control the geography, they control the inhabitants. Dirt doesn't require a subscription, and it doesn't care about your social credit score. It's the only thing you can stand on that doesn't belong to a cloud server in Silicon Valley. If you don't own a piece of the map, you are effectively a ghost in someone else's machine. The corporate grab isn't just about profit, it's about removing the last exit ramp to true independence. When you own the land, you own the leverage. When you rent it, you are just a guest whose invitation can be revoked at any moment. In an era of programmed everything, the only way to stay sovereign is to secure the one thing they can't update over Wi-Fi. Forget the vanity of a zip code. In 2026, a rented townhouse in a prime city center isn't an asset, it's a gilded cage. You're paying a premium for proximity to a lifestyle you don't actually own. If you want to survive the institutional land grab, you need to buy dirt. Even a small, neglected acre in the middle of nowhere is infinitely more valuable than a luxury rental in Austin or Charlotte. Why? Because that dirt represents a hard stop to corporate overreach. You can't be deplatformed from your own land. You can't have your living permissions revoked by a board of directors because you didn't follow the latest ESG mandate. Real land is the ultimate hedge against a programmed world. It is the only place where you can build a fortress, grow your own resources, and exist outside the subscription loop. The institutions want you to think rural land is useless because it's the one thing they haven't fully monopolized yet. They want you concentrated in high-density rent traps where they control the utilities, the internet, and the very air you breathe. Stop chasing the status of a trendy street address and start chasing the sovereignty of a deed. Owning the ground, no matter how remote, is the first step toward becoming unhackable. In the 2026 housing market, a mortgage pre-approval is a white flag of surrender. If you're waiting 45 days for a bank to clear a loan, the institutions have already closed the deal and moved on to the next one. To survive this land grab, you have to adopt the predator's tactics. You need to get liquid and stay lethal. This isn't about saving pennies in a high-yield account that barely keeps up with the cost of living. It's about aggressive capital accumulation and tactical patience. You need to strip your lifestyle of every non-essential pro-subscription and status symbol to build a war chest. We're talking about a concentrated pool of capital, cash, physical gold, or liquid assets that allows you to strike instantly. When a distressed property hits the market or a private seller needs an out, an all-cash offer is your only leverage. It's the only language the system respects. Being lethal means having the ability to close in 72 hours, while everyone else is still filling out paperwork at the bank. You aren't just saving for a house, you are building a strike force. The goal is to move faster than the corporate algorithms, cutting through the red tape with the sheer force of liquidity. If you don't have the cash to bypass the gatekeepers, you aren't a player, you're just a spectator. In 2026, the battle for the American dream isn't fought on a national level. It's fought county by county. If you're trying to buy in a Tier 1 city like Phoenix, Atlanta, or Charlotte, you aren't just competing with other families. You're fighting a losing war against institutional algorithms that have already mapped every square inch of the neighborhood. To win, you have to practice geographic arbitrage. You need to identify the blind spots, the states and zones where the overhead of a massive corporation makes it inefficient for them to manage individual doors. We're looking for regions with fragmented title records, lower population density, and local regulations that favor the individual over the REIT, Real Estate Investment Trust. While everyone else is fighting for a 1,200 square foot rental in a hot market, you should be looking at the Midwest, the Deep South, or the rural corridors of the Rust Belt. These are the areas where the corporate yield hasn't reached its threshold yet. Geographic arbitrage is about moving your capital from a high-control, high-cost environment to a high-sovereignty, low-cost one. You're trading a commute for a deed. You're trading a trendy coffee shop for 5 acres of land that no Wall Street analyst is ever going to put on a spreadsheet. In 2026, the most valuable map you can own is the one that shows where the institutions aren't looking. The reality of 2026 is binary. You are either the master of your own domain, or you are a line item in a corporate spreadsheet. There is no middle ground left. Every month you spend renting the dream is another month you are subsidizing the very machine that is engineering your permanent displacement. Ownership isn't about status anymore. It's about survival. It is the only thing that separates a sovereign citizen from a controlled unit in a digital fiefdom. I want you to do one thing today. Audit your own zip code. Go to your local county tax assessor's website and look at the recent sales in your neighborhood. See how many of those homes were bought by families, and how many were swallowed by LLCs with names you've never heard of. See who really owns the ground you're standing on. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. The window is closing, and the institutions aren't waiting for you to get your finances in order. They are moving at the speed of light. Stop playing their game by their rules. Get liquid, find the blind spots, and secure your piece of the map while it's still legally possible. I'm Jack Finance. Build your fortress before they buy the ground under your feet.